Tu Hashem, ay 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 ay, Elokeinu, Melech Olam, Asher Gidishuni b'mitzvosav v'tzivuni. Shai ba 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 siku burigatu Hashem Elokeinu Machabroche, lai shai basiku, in sikile aran. Machabroche, borichatu beboyechu, zo machtu bechagechu, nor besimche zam. La 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 la, lai shai basiku, la 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 la, lai shai basiku, la 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 shai basiku, la 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 la, lai shai basiku. La 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 shabasiku la 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 shabasiku Betzile de mai menise ich bisen kadish na vromu vini Yitzchak uvini Yaakov uvini Moshe Rabbeinu Agna Koyen Yosef Atzadik David HaMelech Al Nadilas Lilev Shehechiyoni Lai shabasiku Machabroche Lai shabasiku In Sikile Aran Machabroche, borichatu bevoyechu V'so machtu bechagechu Nor besimche zam Machabroche, lai shai basiku In sikile aran Machabroche, borichatu bevoyechu V'so machtu bechagechu Nor besimche zam
We're shaking the lulav now.
Shaking the lulav
Up and down.
Back and forth
Take it into the sukkah now.
Into the sukkah
All 7 days.
But not on Shabbos
I got the 4 species now. My willow branches, yeah. I shake my myrtle now. And now I'm feeling the simcha.
I knew you would.
We're shaking the lulav now.
Shaking the lulav,
Front and back.
6 directions.
Take it back to the center now.
Back to the center.
Hodul Hashem Kitov. I got a bumpy little S-robe now.
Yellow citrus.
You know it looks so fine.
Smells so good.
It's gonna make some tasty jelly, yeah.
Spice.
But during Sukkot you're mine.
I know you're mine.
Shaking the lulav now.
Shaking the lulav,
Up and down.
back and forth.
Come on in the sukkah now.
Into the sukkah,
Get on under the schach.
under the sky.
Come on, invite the Ushpiz in now.
Avram Avinu.
You gotta open your heart.
open wide.
I'm loving, I'm Yisrael.
The Jewish people,
We're all together now.
all together now.
We'll shake a lulav now.
Shaking the lulav,
We'll shake a lulav now.
shaking the lulav,
We'll shake a lulav now.
shaking the lulav. It's a beautiful night. We're looking for something fun to do. Hey baby, I think I wanna build a booth. Is it the stars in the sky, or is it these dancing Jews? Well, who cares, baby? I think we're living in a booth.
Well, in my tabernacle, I got everything you need for the show. With my intro, so come on now. There's if it rains, got a whole lot of chains, don't you know? This clock doesn't go. It stays on, yo. No. Say love, and we'll go. If you're shaking, like I'm shaking.
It's a beautiful night. We're looking for something fun to do. Hey baby, I think I wanna build a booth. Is it the stars in the sky, or is it these dancing Jews? Who cares, baby? I think we're living in a booth.
Moving out here, there's nothing to fear, we'll go fine under the stars. It's alright, girl. If we wake up and the circle breaks up, that's cool. No, I won't blame you. Just run, yeah. No. Say love, and we'll go. If you're shaking, like I'm shaking, shake the mind, that's a song. Mimane Yeshua, waters overflow from the fountains of salvation.
Say it right now, baby. Say it right now, baby.
Just let it
Say it right now, baby.
right now.
Say it right now. חגך והיית אך שמח ושמחת בחגך והיית אך שמח. ושמחת בחגך והיית שמח ושמחת בחגך והיית שמח ושמחת בחגך והיית שמח ושמחת בחגך והיית שמח. אתה וחרתנו מכל העמים, אהבת אותנו ורצית בנו ורוממתנו מכל הלשונות. אהבת אותנו ורצית בנו ורוממתנו מכל הלשונות. קידשתנו במצוות
Shalom from Portugal. I am Sheila Miriam, a Jewish descendant of the Anasim of Portugal. I do advocacy to bring awareness about the Bnei Anasim, the descendants of the Jews of the Inquisition. If you wish to know more about my work, please subscribe to my newsletter and YouTube channel. Today we focus on the festival of Sukkot, which all Jews are celebrating now around the world. Sukkot is known as the festival of happiness, Simcha. And for that reason, I felt it pertinent to show the most incredible character of Jews and the Jews showing joy and faith despite their many travails and persecutions. It was in this spirit that a Jew called Sebastián Rodriguez built a sukkah in the Inquisition prison. In the middle of his darkest time, in a dark period of our history, Jews found themselves, and with bravery and courage, they honored Hashem and pursued the impossible to maintain their Jewish faith. The sukkah is temporary and is to remind us that life is transient. The Jews of Portugal and Spain learned the difficult lesson of losing everything they had in the blink of an eye. However, their Jewish spirit remains resilient to its roots. I am very pleased that today I'm giving my first shiur in Portugal, and I am able to witness the victory of our people after more than 530 years. We are alive. We are celebrating Sukkot from the north to the south of the country, and Bnei Anasim every day are returning to the faith of their ancestors. Our guest speaker, Mrs. Ronit Treatman, is an author of Hans Jewish Holidays book. Ronit was born in Israel and grew up in Ethiopia and Venezuela. After serving in the Israel Defense Forces Foreign Liaison Division, she studied international business administration in the United States. She was a stay-at-home mom of 3 children for 10 years, residing in Philadelphia. When her youngest child started school, she became a writer, editor, and ultimately president of the Philadelphia Jewish Voice. During this period, she also created the blog and website Hands on Jewish Holidays and administered many social network communities focused on engagement with Judaism. She has lectured and presented at conferences around the United States on topics ranging from engagement with the descendants of Anasim, forced converts to Catholicism, to kosher locusts. Her writing is the distillation of ideas that have been percolating for many years, drawing from her professional research, her multinational upbringing, and her experiences raising her own children. I would like to introduce you Ronit Treatman, a good friend of the Return of the Bnei Anasim. She also helps Ashley Perry at Reconnectar, organization that works for many decades to advocate and work towards the return of the Bnei Anasim as well. Ronit, thank you so much. We are looking forward to hear from you today.
Thank you very much. So we're going to discuss Under the Nose of the Inquisition. Next. So Sukkot in Hebrew is called Chag HaAsif, which means the festival of the ingatherings, which is the fall harvest, and taken from Exodus 34:22, which says, "And thou shalt observe the Feast of Weeks, even of the first fruits of wheat harvest, and the Feast of Ingathering at the turn of the year." So this is the last harvest for the year in Israel, which in Israel tends to be olives. In other countries, for example, in the United States, it might be things like pumpkins, but in Israel, it is the olive harvest. Next, please. It is also called Chag HaSukkot, or the Festival of Booths, so temporary huts, and this is taken from ancient times when during the harvest people would build a small shelter in their field so they could gather their crops from dawn to dusk, right? Get to them before the animals did. And so we go back to those ancient experiences of trying to live in the fields, even if we live in an urban place, living outdoors under the stars. Next, please. And Sukkot is also a commemoration of the exodus from Egypt of the ancient Israelites. So we relive the experience of the children of Israel living in the desert for 40 years. Next, please. There are a few basic rules for building a sukkah. One is that it has to provide shade, and it must be built under the sky. It can't be built under some other kind of a roof. Next, please. It must have 3 walls. They can be from any material. This is showing the way it was done in biblical times with palm branches from the date palm. Next, please. It must be large enough to sit in comfortably. You can't just sort of crawl in. You have to be able to be resting. Next, please. The roof has to be an all-natural roof built from plants that grow from the ground. It's called schach, and not supposed to be edible plants, just for shade. And leave enough space between the branches and leaves to have raindrops come into the sukkah to be able to see the light and the stars. Next, please. And Jews are required to have 4 species when celebrating Sukkot. It says in Leviticus 23:40, and you shall take you on the first day the fruit of goodly trees, branches of palm trees and boughs of thick trees, and willows of the brook, and you shall rejoice before the Lord your God 7 days. So what we have is, we have the lulav, it's a closed date palm in the center. We have the hadas, which is a myrtle branch, arava, the willow branch, and the etrog, which is the citron. Next, please. And so people have the tradition of decorating their sukkah, right? People can make paper chains, you can use plants, fruits, all kinds of decorations to make it seem festive. And next, please. Now, Sephardic Jews take decorating the sukkah to a whole other level, and this is the Moroccan Jews. They make absolutely sumptuous sukkot. They use lanterns, fabrics, rugs, pillows, beautiful. They make it a beautiful, beautiful, magical place. Next, please. They have a special tradition of a small chair symbolizing Elijah's chair is hung on the side of the sukkah, and Elijah was the prophet who was supposed to say when the Messiah is coming. And so he has a special honor in the sukkah. Next. Okay. Sorry. Okay, so the things that are served to eat in the sukkah. This is called bizcochos. Bizcochos are from Iberia, so they went with the Sephardic Jews all over the world after the expulsion, and they're basically like biscotti, double baked cookies, flavored with anise, made sort of in the shape of a flower, and that's very traditional in the sukkah. Next, please. And with the same dough, they would make Star of David cookies, sometimes hang them up sort of to be a beautiful decoration. Next, please. So this is especially Spanish and Portuguese Jews, cranberries and plums to decorate in the sukkah, a marriage of thanking for the harvest in the old world and the new. Cranberries are a New World fruit native to North America. And so when the first Portuguese and Spanish Jews came, usually with the Dutch to New Amsterdam, then later with the French to Montreal and Quebec City, they encountered cranberries. And so this is part of the thanking God for the bounty of the harvest. So I really think it's a very beautiful tradition to put both the plums from Europe, from the old world, together with the New World fruits. Next, please. Syrian Jews have a tradition of putting the 7 species in the sukkah. And so these are written in the Torah, right? 7 species of the land of Israel, which are wheat, barley, grapes, figs, pomegranates, olives, and dates. Next, please. And the Moroccans have a tradition of decorating their lulav with golden ribbons. This comes directly from the Talmud, where it says, the people of Jerusalem bound their lulavs with strands of gold. Next, please. Another beautiful tradition seen in the Syrian, Moroccan, Judeo-Spanish traditions is to take the lulav and turn it into a broom. And what does this mean? It's the tradition of taking an object used for one mitzvah, observing one commandment, and then using it to do another mitzvah, another commandment. So you take the lulav from Sukkot. When Passover comes, there's a tradition of sweeping the house for the last crumbs of leavened bread, of leavened products, of chametz. So you use the lulav, you sweep, and then you burn it all together. Your last chametz with your lulav. Next, please. Okay, so this is an etrog, a citron. In Leviticus 23:40, it says to have the fruit of the goodly trees, it was decided that it would be an etrog. An etrog's Latin name is Citrus medica. It's a completely edible tree. If you cut a branch, you can taste the inside. It's edible. The tree itself must be ungrafted. The fruit has to be unscarred like this one. Next, please. So one of the things Sephardic Jews make is etrog jam. It's called sukkar. The oldest recipes is from the 1400s from Sicily. And the etrog was cut up. It was immersed in seawater for 40 days. The water was changed out every week to allow it to ferment in this brine. And then it was cooked with sugar and water to soften it and to sweeten it. And it would be preserved that way. Sometimes it would be put out in the sun to dry. So in that way, it could be used over a long period of time for baking. You know, they would make it all kinds of confectionery. So this is the name is actually sukkar, even today in Italy. Next, please. Another way to preserve the etrog is with spices to turn it into besamim, into scented, sweet scents to smell at the end of Shabbat during the Havdalah ceremony. So this one is you stud it with cloves, and both the cloves and their oils, they preserve the etrog with its peel, and the scent lasts for a long time. Next, please. Now, the only thing we're obligated to eat in the sukkah is bread, and as it is written in the Talmud, you have to eat an amount which is called kezait, the amount of an olive. The amounts in the Talmud would be usually to a visual comparison. So things would be like an olive, like an egg. That's the way they would describe how much you're supposed to eat. So for bread, it was a kezait as an olive, and bread in ancient times was flat bread. So this is the really old school sukkah bread is a pita, flat bread. Next, please. So Italian Jews would bake a special kind of bread called a bollo, like a ball, and it was scented with anise. It turns out the spice of the Sephardic Jews, and even going back to ancient times, was anise. Just as it was used for the bizcochos, it's used here for the bollo. And that traveled with the Sephardic Jews when they went. Next, please. Okay, so Moroccan Jews, in the sukkah, you would make a delicious feast. One of the most refined things the Moroccan Jews make is pastilla. It's very complicated. It's a very thin kind of dough. This is with an Andalusian recipe. Very thin dough, and then they would have usually pigeon, cinnamon, almonds, saffron, onions, eggs. The dough is called warka, very, very fancy. And it's interesting that in Israel, there was a film made showing when the Moroccan Jews came to Israel in the 50s. And it shows this woman, she was dying, and she was sort of training her mourners, what they would say. They were rehearsing what they had to laud her for during her life. And the thing she wanted to be remembered for was pigeon, right? Pastilla, the squab pastilla that she was famous for making. Next, please. Another stuffed food that would be served in Sukkot was sambusak, stuffed foods to celebrate the harvest. usually with chickpeas. They would stuff it sometimes with potatoes or cheese or ground meat. This is a delicious sambusak that they would serve. Next, please. Another famous Sephardic thing to serve in a sukkah is stuffed vegetables called machshi. It could be eggplants, it could be peppers, it could be zucchini, whichever ones they wanted. Sometimes in tomato sauce, sometimes in a lemon-based sauce. Very, very common to make stuffed vegetables. Next, please. And to the sukkah, this was a Kabbalistic custom. You would invite ushpizin and ushpizata. Ushpizin and ushpizata in Aramaic means honored guests. And it was different people from the Torah. So it would usually be Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Moses, Aaron, Joseph, and David, and Sarah, Miriam, Deborah, Hannah, Abigail, Huldah, and Esther. And each night one male, one female would be invited, and they would tell their story and share those traditions with the guests in the sukkah. Next, please. And then came the celebration of Hoshana Rabbah and the 7th day of Sukkot, which is the final judgment. And that's when the blessing is to say Pitka Tova. It's when finally the judgment is filed away and you hope you have a good one, right? So it's a Pitka Tova. Please have a good note to put in the file. Next, please. So for Hoshana Rabbah, the Sephardic Jews of Amsterdam, England, America, they sound the shofar, just to remember the way it was in the temple when the shofar was sounded and the willow branches were placed around the altar. What's amazing that we still have this tradition is the shofar is the only instrument used in ritual practice in the temple that is still used in ritual practice today. Its design has remained completely unchanged for 3,000 years. Every time we hear it, we connect back to the service in the temple in Jerusalem. So it's really an amazing experience to do. Next, please. Another thing served in the sukkah by Judeo-Spanish Jews is a cazuela de quesos, a type of noodles with cheese, made usually with manchego, with sheep's milk. And it's, during the time of studying Torah all night. And so it goes back to the Torah's sweetness is compared to milk and honey under your tongue in the Song of Songs. And so that's why, you make this dairy dish to study with. Next, please. Sephardic Jews say slichot, the penitential prayers. Last opportunity, right? To try to make sure you get a good judgment. Next, please. Syrian and Moroccan Jews stay awake all night. They study Deuteronomy, Psalms, and the Zohar, which is the chief book of Jewish mysticism. Next, please. So, how did crypto Jews manage to celebrate Sukkot, right? They had everything taken from them. They weren't allowed to look at the Talmud again. So what did they do? They went back to the source, the Bible, Leviticus, and I wrote for you what they could read there. What was their reference? So basically what they had was to observe on the 15th day of the 7th month, the harvest festival, to build a sukkah and to dwell in it for 7 days. Next, please. And they basically had the lunar calendar here. It says the timing of Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Sukkot. And you'll find many times in the archives of the Inquisition, Yom Kippur is referred to as the day of the blowing of the horn. So it's sort of really, really changed its name from Yom Kippur to the day of the horn. Next, please. And so they went back to observing the sky so they could follow the lunar calendar. It was one of the things they would be found guilty of, and it gave rise to many kinds of superstitions for people to protect themselves from being accused of Judaism. So to this day, there are people who say, don't study the stars. You'll get, pimples. You'll get all kinds of scars and pimples from doing that. It was a superstition that arose from this. Next, please. So you would wonder how it was that when somebody was called into the court of the Inquisition, how did they know what this person did wrong? Because the inquisitors went after not just Jews. They went after Muslims. They went after, from the Native American traditions and those of the enslaved Africans, right? They went after witchcraft. So, first of all, Yom Kippur, Sukkot started to be called La Pascua de las Cabañuelas, the festival of the huts. And I'd like to read you a little bit of how the inquisitors knew what they were looking for. Some of the inquisitors were Jews who had converted. Sometimes it was from interrogating Jews that they knew what they were supposed to look for. So I have here manuscripts from the General Archive of the Holy Office. I think this one here is from Valencia, and it's here's a little quote. The inquisitor must be very aware of the ceremonies that the Jews usually conduct in order to be able to hold an audience with the accused and find out if he's dealing with the truth and help the accused to fully say all the ceremonies. And they are the ones that are followed by the most ordinary audience with a confident Jew. Ordinary Jewish ceremonies and rites. Here is the Pascua de las Cabañuelas. The Passover of the Cabañuelas, which falls on the 15th day of the month of September, signifies when the children of Israel left Egypt and went through the desert 40 years settled by cabañas. And to this significance and in memory of this, the Jews made the said cabañuelas by putting canes, fennel, and other vegetables and fruits in them, according to the concurrence of the time. And the said cabañuelas had to be made calmly and in a place where the sky could be seen, like the ones that the Jews had in the desert, whose cabañuelas lasted 9 days, giving thanks to God because all the fruits of the earth were welcomed. And the 7 days of the 9, the Jews were obliged to eat under the said cabañuela. Next, please. And so you see that the 4 species quickly disappear. They're just too obtrusive, too easy to be observed. The last 2 times that they are mentioned are 1490. Gonzalo Sanchez Caballero was seen riding a mule whilst holding a green willow on the day before Sukkot. He was brought in for questioning because of that. And then in 1492 in Toledo, Rui Garcia Serrano was seen holding a grapefruit and a palm, just a palm branch, and saying, Ana Adonai Oceana. For that, he was taken in. Next, please. And so there's still a few crypto-Jewish sukkahs from the 1500s. In 1504, there's a testimony of the Inquisition of Juana Rodriguez of Toledo. She let a Jew borrow a rug and a nice sheet to build a sukkah. She kept the laws of the Jews to be saved by them. And in 1509, Elvira Martinez visited a sukkah to see what it was like. She was tried by the Inquisition. Next, please. One of the testimonies from Toledo is that Jews, if they had guests in a sukkah, they would offer priscos. Priscos is a type of medieval peach, sort of rare these days, but it's a peach that is very soft, doesn't keep long, was mostly used in preserves, but it would be offered as part of the fall harvest. Next, please. The other treat that would be offered in the sukkah was candy, and candy meant marzipan. Marzipan was a Jewish and a Muslim confection that came to Spain with the Moors, because Spain didn't have any almonds until the Moors came and brought them. And so marzipan is made by grinding up almonds with rose water and saffron, rolled up into balls. It was and sugar, of course, and just made very sweet, delicious paste. Now that was one thing. The other thing that was called candy was fruit preserves. Very often quince. Jews would very often make a quince preserve, make it into a kind of a jelly, and that was served in the sukkah. Next, please. The other thing that you would have in Iberia were Judaizing priests and monks. Oftentimes it was the Jesuits, right? They would be forced to convert, but they would still sort of secretly keep Sukkot. There's they would have their sukkahs openly. They got away with it for a long time, almost until 1600. And the other thing they did that was amazing, there were actually whole monasteries where you had Judaizing priests, monks, and nuns. And for example, the Poblet Monastery in Catalonia, they have hidden illuminated manuscripts of the very famous Poblet Passover Haggadah, only shown publicly in the 80s. I mean, it was they just preserved it all. They were able to seclude and hide things. Next, please. And this is the famous sukkah of the inquisitorial jail. This was in Mexico City in 1603. A man named Sebastian Rodriguez. He was imprisoned by the Inquisition of Mexico City in 1596, accused of Judaizing. He was born in Portugal. At age 14, he sailed to the New World, New Spain, which was in Mexico. He studied Torah with Luis de Carvajal, El Mozo. He was one of the founders of New Mexico, a very prominent crypto-Jewish family in among the founding families of Mexico. And he was actually burned at the stake for Judaizing, but he taught Sebastian Rodriguez. He had a famous artifact that is an exhibit now as a palm-sized booklet of the Jewish laws. So anyway, Sebastian Rodriguez studied with him, and he was put in jail, and so he was under Captain Esteban Lemos, who was a notary for the Inquisition. So Captain Lemos was given an honor. He was special honor. So Sebastian Rodriguez said, "I would like to celebrate your honor here in jail. I'd like to throw a feast for you." He was allowed to do it. So he sponsored it. He asked his jailers to bring in orange tree branches to decorate the jail to make it a beautiful party. They actually built a sukkah with it, and he ordered a wonderful, fancy, sukkah feast, and he made sure the kashrut laws were observed. He invited other people in the jail who were also crypto Jews, and his family, and everyone sat together under this sukkah. It makes one wonder if the Captain Lemos himself was a crypto Jew. But anyway, they celebrated sukkah in the jail. And incredibly, on December 2nd, 1605, Sebastian Rodriguez and his wife and child were set free. Why? Because there was a papal amnesty issued. And who issued this? The Pope who issued it was Pope Paul V. He was a Borghese family Pope, and that family itself was from a crypto-Jewish background. So it's very interesting that they were the ones who issued he was the one who issued this amnesty and left them. So they were set free, even though they really got away with it. Next, please. You would think that all these crypto-Jewish sukkah things would have ended in the 1600s, but in the 1980s, in New Mexico is Dr. David Gitlitz was doing this research. Here is something called Jacales. Jacales is an autumn festival in New Mexico where huts were built. People stayed there for 7 days. They had their meals. 7 saints paid a visit. And they served, next please, bizcochitos, which is it's actually New Mexico's state cookie. They're made just like the bizcochos from the Sephardic Jews, with anise and cinnamon. And of course, now this shows the crypto-Jewish component. They're full of lard, but they still shaped like stars. And it's the official state cookie, not really well known outside of New Mexico. And they're still called bizcochitos. So next, please. And I would just like to end by saying that in 2021, this is in Mallorca, they had their first public sukkah since the Inquisition in the former Jewish quarter. And I would like to say a quote from Isca Valls, who is from a crypto-Jewish family, descendant of forced converts, who returned to Judaism. And she said, "This is a victory over the Inquisition and proof that we are like a phoenix rising once more from the ashes." So if you would please show this.
Yo me haría pescador, pescaría mis dolores con palabritas de un amor. Pescaría mis dolores. A ver dónde estás, Zamora, mi Mariana, Maderiri, Penderu. Yo me haría pescador. Pescaría mis dolores con palabritas. Yo me haría pescador.
Thank you so much, Ronnie. That was quite a lot to unload, and you did it so beautifully. And
Thank you.
it was just marvelous to see all these little different foods and, you know, the different ways of expressing Sukkot from all types and countries of Sefarad. And it was really amazing. Thank you for sharing this with us. We can really see that you spend a great deal learning so much about this. For those who don't know Ronit, she's very active online, advocating and spreading the word of Anusim. She's very much passionate about the subject, as I am and many others. And she helped us as well sharing our shiurim online. And her book, it's a really good handy book, which I highly recommend everyone to purchase. You can take with you when you go on trips, and it gives you just excellent ideas on how to celebrate your holidays. And it has so many different features there and curiosities. It's a must to have. Ronit, you ready for the Q&A? If we have any
Sure.
questions.
I would only like to add, by the way, that I did write it as a mitzvah, and so all you're paying for is the printing fee if you get the paperback. I really did it for, you know, for my readers, for my crypto Jewish community who I dedicated to. So I hope you enjoy it. I gave it with a full heart.
Thank you, Ronit. As always, you are amazing. You really are amazing. And Ronit, one question is, having you had such a multicultural upbringing, I think, what was your most amazing Sukkot that you experienced, and why?
Oh, I would have to say it was in a little farm, like in upstate New York, where an organization here sort of did the whole back to nature kind of Sukkot, which I loved it because they did all these really nice activities you can do if you're in a farm. For example, to really make most of us live in cities. We're very disconnected from agriculture, right? So there was an opportunity to do a little bit of gleaning, to go into the corner of the field, to pick, whatever. I mean, and some of it was things like apples because it's North America. But the important thing is we got that experience of picking a little bit of what was left in the field to then donate to the poor, which, I mean, I loved it. I thought it was a really wonderful, immersive way to go back to relive that experience of being in a sukkah in the middle of a real field, to pick a little bit of the produce and then to share it. It was wonderful.
Thank you, Ronit. Also, could you describe us a little bit more? Curious to know I was if you have
We're having a small technical difficulty. I apologize. In any event, if anyone is able to experience Sukkot in nature, it's really, really special to any extent that you can do it. I mean, if you can, even if you have to buy it, it's still really, really nice. Or if you can go out into the woods or any kind of place where you're surrounded by nature, in a little bit, you can experience a little bit of what it was like to be in that agricultural past. Or, I mean, even more so, if you can go to somewhere like the desert, then you can really feel like the children of Israel did. So if you visit Israel, if you visit the Judean desert or any other place, the Negev, I mean, it's amazing. It's the solitude, the quiet. You really can feel that grandness and how amazing it is to be here. So it's very special. The other special thing I love about Sukkot is seeing the stars through the roof. I love that feeling that you sit there and you look up. And one other thing that I have really enjoyed doing with my family about the Ushpizin and Ushpizata is, other than talking about the people from the Torah, I actually take that as an opportunity to talk about people in the family that we love and are no longer with us, to introduce them to the younger people in the family who never met them. So, for example, I named my children each for someone who is deceased, right, to keep that name tradition alive. And I tell them about that person they're named for, who I love very much. And hopefully, we do believe that if we give that name, it's an important thing to give a name to someone. Maybe some of the essence of that person will exist in this new person too. So I think it's really interesting for them to know who are they named for, why, what an honor it is, and what a wonderful person that was who came before them, and how wonderful they are, and the life that's waiting for them. So it's another special thing to do. So I hope all of you have an opportunity to try.
Hello, I'm back. I apologize to our viewers. Somehow the internet here in Portugal has playing up a little bit. But thank you, Ronit. I think, Ronit, you show during your presentation different types of foods and traditions. When it came to the lulav, the estrog, could you explain to viewers the different, for instance, the different types of estrog? Because I know Ethiopian use a particular one, Israel is another one. It's just so people have an idea of the differences.
Sure. Well, there are several types of etrogs that are considered kosher. First of all, they have to be ungrafted. It has to be pure, and it's really, really hard to grow it that way. The originally etrogs came from China, from in India, and like from the Himalayas, and they were brought by the Romans. Basically, they've discovered. I mean, they've discovered some really ancient seeds in Egypt and in Israel. Like even in the pyramids, they've had like etrog seed. So, and originally it was brought as a Chinese medicinal kind of fruit, and they was also used as an insecticide. So they were the first ones to bring it. It's not native to the Mediterranean, and so the kinds of etrogs that have been considered kosher, there's some that grow in Morocco, Sicily. There's one in Israel. There's two types that grow. They were planted in Jaffa, and then they were also planted in the sort of near Jerusalem. There are two different distinct types. So the one in Jaffa is called baladi. But basically, to be considered kosher, they have to have the stamen has to be not broken. They have to have not a completely smooth skin, but no scars. It has to be beautiful. It has to smell good. So the Ethiopian is from, it was when Ethiopian and Yemen were one country. It was Sheba, right? Like the Queen of Sheba. And it tends to be a little bit darker color. The Moroccans can be huge. They can grow really, really big. But the point is, though, they test them to make sure they haven't been grafted with some other kind of plant. The other kind of citrus fruit that is an etrog but is not kosher is a Buddha's hand. While taxonomically it is a citron, it's not rounded. They want it to be a rounded fruit, so that is not considered kosher etrog. So those are basically the ones that are approved. Now, interestingly, the only thing it says in the Torah is fruit of a beautiful tree, and so not all Jews even use citron. For example, the Karaites think it's an olive branch, right? They'll put olives. So that's just a rabbinic definition. But what's amazing about the etrog is that it is and the lulav itself, it's a really unifying Jewish symbol. It's very ancient. You'll find it in synagogues. You'll find it in frescoes. You'll find it in in art. You'll find it on graves. And you'll find it in coins. Even it was used in a protest, right? The Sadducees were throwing it when they were protesting. So you have it's a very important symbol for Jews. And one interesting thing about the etrog is it needs a lot of water to grow. If there is no water, there are no etrogs. And Sukkot is a harvest festival that ends with Shmini Atzeret, praying for rain. It's a big deal in the Middle East when you're praying for rain, because rain is life. And if you don't have rain, you're not going to have good crops, and you're definitely not going to have any etrogs. So it all ties in nicely together symbolically that way. Etrogs. So it all ties in nicely together symbolically that way.
Thank you so much. Hello. Sorry. It seems like we're having feedback. We apologize for it. It's out of our control. I would like to ask Ronit about the lulav and the Sephardi, Spain and Portuguese colorful ribbons.
Sorry, I didn't really hear it, but I will talk a little bit about the symbolism of the lulav. So as we saw, and maybe one can put up a picture of it again of the lulav. It has in the center is a date palm, right? It's a closed frond of a date palm, and so it symbolically it means somebody who studies Torah but doesn't do any good deeds. And then if you look at the arava, the willow, it has no smell, it has no taste. So it's sort of it's come to symbolize a person who has not studied Torah and doesn't do any good deeds. The myrtle, the hadass, smells really good. It doesn't have any flavor. And so it symbolizes somebody who does good deeds but doesn't study Torah. And the etrog, which looks like the heart and it smells good and it has a flavor, uh, that's somebody who does good deeds and studies Torah. It sort of describes four types of Jews, but they're all together, right? Because everyone belongs together. We should all be united. Therefore, like the lulav, all of us belong together. We all belong in the sukkah, and we all belong in the Jewish people.
Hello. Thank you, Ronit. We are experiencing some technical issues with the internet. And Ronit, unless you would like just to finalize, speak just a little bit about your connection, personal family connection with the banana seam, so our viewers can relate more why this is so important to you.
Right. Well, I have a very special connection with Bnei Anusim because I like to say that I'm the other side of the mirror. I discovered that my own family, um, had lived in Iberia, which we had no idea. I thought they were just, Polish Jews. I didn't know that, but we did a DNA test. I did this project that was done with a company called GeneBase. They were doing a project with National Geographic to map out the way people had migrated around the world. And I was very interested in my family stories because so many people were killed in the Holocaust that we didn't really know much. So my brother and I did it. And on my maternal side, we saw that before they were in Poland, they had been in Girona, which, I even got the name of a city. They'd been there so long. It's in Catalonia, in northern Spain. And then the map showed something amazing. It showed that right around 1492, the time of the Alhambra decree of the expulsion, it shows the family splitting in two. The side I descend from went to Italy and then to the Netherlands and then to Poland from there. But then it shows the other half stays there for a while and then they go to northern Brazil, to Recife. So it was clear to me they'd been forced to convert and got out as soon as they could. And so for me, that was an earthquake because I grew up in Venezuela. And at the time, I knew about the story of the Sephardic Jews because half of the community there were Sephardic Jews, of the Jewish community. And so, my friends had told me about their family story. And in solidarity with them, I was never planning to visit Spain or Portugal. I said, I don't need to go to a place like that did that to my friends. So I couldn't believe I was also part of that story and that part of my family had been taken that way. And so now there's not enough data coming out of Brazil. So the way the map went, it sort of ended there. That could mean one of two things. Either they got there and then everybody died, or they got there and I still have some very distant cousins, right? But I just don't have the data to find them. Of course, I would love to meet them. I don't care what color they are. I don't care what religion they are. If anyone survived, I would love to meet them today. But the other part of it was some of my own friends and teachers. I attended the international school, and sometimes I would meet people and I would get this strange feeling when I was dealing with their parents, and I couldn't understand why I was feeling these things. And now I understand that they knew, they themselves had descended from people like that. If you think of who my friends were, they were from Peru, they were from places like Colombia, and now I realize that there were many crypto Jews who went there to get away from the Inquisition, to work, to help develop America. And so, I didn't, those names didn't mean anything to me in those times. I had no idea that those names that I grew up surrounded by symbolize, mark them as descendants of Jews. I really didn't know anything about that. But, and then I also didn't know that there was anything at all left in Spain or Portugal. My Sephardic friends told me, Judaism there is dead. There's nothing left. Once we left, it was over. And I published an article in the Times of Israel about my discovery of my family background in Girona. And all of a sudden, people who live in Barcelona now and never left started connecting with me in Facebook. And I just started to shake when I put it together, when I realized, oh my God, they descend from Jews. They've been practicing in secret. They showed me pictures of things they do, of candles in ceramic containers. They were hiding in the house, still doing this every Friday. And I just couldn't believe it. So it just really, really touched me very deeply. And I decided to do what I could, to do, tikkun olam, to help repair all this hurt, to repair the damage in any way I could. And so this is a very Kabbalistic thing, right? The vessel is broken, the shards are spread all over the world, the light is dispersed. How can we put it back together? And so I started volunteering with Ashley. I befriended Ashley Perry, who founded an organization in Jerusalem called Reconnectar, where he heads the Knesset caucus to relate to descendants of forced converts. And this organization's mission is to connect people to anything they're interested in, whether it's just learning about the background, learning about Judaism, learning about their names, whatever it is. We do not convert anyone. Obviously, that's not for us to do, but we are a resource. And so it's been very meaningful to me. And I've made many friends, and it just we enrich each other, and I treasure every one of them.
Thank you, Ronit. I think now the viewers can really see why this is so deep in your soul, because we can feel it, and it's beautiful. I share the same feelings, the same passion, and we feel like this is all to speak up, to show, to let people know and learn the tales of the Anusim and their descendants, the Bnei Anusim, who are returning like me, who are returning, and they go through a lot emotionally and also physically, financially, and even sometimes between family and friends. Not all the family return at once in some cases, and some returnees go through a lot to return to the faith of their ancestors. And it's really good that we are able to do this. For us, a special meaning that this shiur was today in Portugal. I could never imagine one day I'll be here doing a shiur about Sukkot, when many, many centuries ago, my ancestors were just trying to strive to survive and keep whatever they have. This is their honor more than my honor. And I think, Ronit, you relate to that. And I would like to thank everyone who participated here today, and ask Juan, our technician, if he can add an image. We would just like to close today with that image. And this image, it's from the first day of Sukkot, where the Portuguese and Spanish in Amsterdam, and perhaps in London and other parts, have the tradition of circumnavigate the Teva with the Arbat, Hamim, Mim, the four species, while reciting Hashanat, prayers for salvation. And this is just a depiction I wanted to finish, that, wherever they've done to us, we went. Some were able to escape, others were a trap, but one way or another, they kept something, and they try to remember and pass it on, their roots. And that is so important, that I say to all my friends today who are not religious, no matter what, keep the Jewish traditions and teach your children the Jewish traditions, because you never know. If my family would not have kept, I would never had realized that when I bump into my family, Jewish family, that my family traditions were Jewish. So keeping a Jewish tradition is a holy thing. It's a very important thing. And I hope you all had enjoyed tonight. It was a real pleasure to have you, Ronit. I hope
Thank you so much.
First of many more. Thank you. Thank you, Juan, who is in the background and helps us always. Thank you all, and I hope to see you in our next shiur. Happy Sukkot.